be part of. Okay, sorry, I woken up and I found my place in darkness, no power. I'm trying to see how I can connect my phone to the laptop so that I can be having some power. But I can see, as I said earlier, that I already have 2 professors here and about 3 students who have joined us this early. I want to very much appreciate the professors who are with us in the students session. Professor James from Chambogo University, you're very welcome this morning. Professor Joseph from MOOBS. Thank you very much for being part of the student session. My brothers and sisters, I can see you, you're very welcome. James, you've been away for a long time. Can you say hi to us? James Mubangis.
Yes, good morning, members. And good morning, Rasu. Good morning, professors and friends who are already logged in at this time.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you for coming back. It's been long. I want you to be on the standby. I'm also aware that you work with Umeme. You better call some of your juniors to come to my rescue. I'm in darkness and I'm not very sure whether I can run through the session with the amount of power that I have left. I want to also, I see a new, can I say new face or a new name? I see Shamsa Khalif. Why don't you greet us just in a few seconds?
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Shamsa Khalif, joining you from Nairobi.
From Nairobi?
Yeah, I'm a student at IBSK LLM.
How did you hear about us, Shamsa?
I have been given this opportunity by one of my professors. I would like to thank him and say thank you, Master. Thank you, my professor, Master.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much for joining us all the way from Nairobi.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we happen to have these sessions every Sunday, starting from 3 sharp, and our student session ends at 4, and then the other session takes us up to around 6:30. But you're very welcome. We hope that you really enjoy and feel at home. John, my brother from Busitema, John, can you greet these people briefly, just in seconds?
I greet you, my brother Elastu, and my workmate James Mwangizi. I recognize our professors, Professor Tai and James Kangari, and my colleagues who are on the forum. I greet you. I hope you are well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John and James. As I've already said, you better send your juniors to my rescue. I'm running out of power. I'm in darkness. Okay. I also want to recognize Professor, I think I saw Professor Michael Okoche, Professor Michael Okoche, Associate Professor from UTAMU University. Thank you very much for being part of us this morning. I can see we are about 13, that is about 9 students. I think we can kickstart our discussion this morning. But before we kickstart, I have a friend who is called the iPhone SIM. It would be very good if you renamed your gadget so that we could address you by your name. Thank you very much. Also have a new person today, Yunia Musasisi. Thank you for joining us. Can you say hi to us in just 2 seconds?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having us on this forum. I am a prospective PhD student starting soon, and I'm hoping that Professor Antai can be my supervisor. Thank you.
You're already, by the time you enter in here, you're already a student, and we welcome you. Thank you very much for being part of us. And we have, maybe lastly, I can give chance to Subair Arima to say hi to us.
Hello, I greet you all. Rima is my name, and currently I'm a PhD candidate in Bustema University.
Ah,
yeah, ready to. Pardon?
These people are very serious and very active. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Ready to learn. Ready to learn and get enough knowledge to make me add more knowledge to the world and the community that I serve.
Wow. I'm so happy with the commitment coming out from Bustema. At least every single meeting, we have at least more than 3 people on the call joining from Bustema. And I have another friend from Bustema, Mayende Sifuna Thomas. Thomas, say hi to us.
Yeah, thank you very much, my brother, Mr. Lasso. A happy belated New Year. Yes. I'm glad that the year has begun and we are still in good form. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you. So this morning, friends, I want to just take us back to what we had last Sunday. We kickstarted a program last Sunday after a break, and we began looking at how do we write a good background of your study. And we had a very interesting discussion. We had 2 doctors who ably took us through how do you come up with a good background to your study. And there are quite a number of aspects that they touched on. And today I felt that we could just try to get back to that same part of your work, the background, and try to look at some of the aspects that were taught, but this time with a simple example. But I want to again say that whereas this that we are going to discuss today could be one of the ways that you could adopt to write your background, I also want to say that it's not the absolute. There are many other ways, there are many other approaches, sometimes depending on the university you come from, sometimes depending on orientation of the professors who are supervising you. So I don't want to tell you that this is one size fit it all or something like that. No, but we can pick ideas from here that can help us. I'm going to share 2 short clips, but after that will be, maybe after the first one, we'll pick some few things that we can discuss together. And then in the end, I will probably invite Professor James to say 1 or 2 things as we move to the second clip. So I want to invite you to watch with me this clip, and then we'll be able to discuss later on. Let me see. Allow me now share the screen. So it's we are now handling chapter 1, which could be what it is proposal or your dissertation, could also be in your paper that you're writing, a manuscript. But all in all, it's we are purposely looking at writing the background of your study. You may be writing a manuscript, you may be writing your proposal, you may be writing your thesis. Each of those things I've mentioned have at least a background. And we all agreed last time, even in the survey that we had, that you really need to come up with a good background of your study. So welcome with me to this short clip, and see if we can pick some few things and add to what we learned last Sunday. Let me see why my sound is not coming out, but should be able to.
Assume that you already have identified the gap of your proposed research. Let us also assume that you already have identified the gap of your proposed research. How to write the opening paragraphs of the background of the study. To begin with, let us assume that you already have conducted a preliminary research on your chosen topic. That is, you already have read a lot of literature and gathered relevant information for writing the background of your study. Let us also assume that you already have identified the gap of your proposed research and have already developed the research questions and thesis statement. If you have not yet identified the gap in your proposed research, you might as well go back to our lesson on how to identify a research gap. So we will just put together everything that you have researched into a background of the study, assuming again that you already have the necessary information. But in this lesson, let's just focus on writing the opening paragraphs. It is important to note at this point that there are different styles of writing the background of the study. Hence, what I will be sharing with you here is not just the only way of writing the background of the study. As a matter of fact, there is no one-size-fits-all style of writing this part of the research or thesis. At the end of the day, you are free to develop your own. However, whatever style it would be, it always starts with a plan which structures the writing process into stages or steps. And the steps that I will share with you here are just some of the most effective ways of writing the background of the study in research. So let's begin. It is always a good idea to begin the background of your study by giving an overview of your research topic. This may include providing a definition of the key concepts of your research or highlighting the main developments of the research topic. Let us suppose that the topic of your study is the lived experiences of students with mathematical anxiety. Here, you may start the background of your study with a discussion on the meaning, nature, and dynamics of the term mathematical anxiety. The reason for this is too obvious. Mathematical anxiety is a highly technical term that is specific to mathematics. Hence, this term is not readily understandable to non-specialists in this field. So, you may write the opening paragraph of your background of the study with this. Mathematical anxiety refers to the individual's unpleasant emotional mood responses when confronted with a mathematical situation. Since you do not invent the definition of the term mathematical anxiety, then you need to provide a citation to the source of the material from which you are quoting. For example, you may say, mathematical anxiety refers to the individual's unpleasant emotional mood responses when confronted with a mathematical situation. Elliott 2020. And then, you may proceed with a discussion on the nature and dynamics of the term mathematical anxiety. You may say, Lou specifically identifies some of the manifestations of this type of anxiety, which include, but not limited to, depression, helplessness, nervousness, and fearfulness in doing mathematical and numerical tasks. After explaining to your readers the meaning, nature, and dynamics, as well as some historical development, if you wish to, of the term mathematical anxiety, you may now proceed to showing the problem or gap of the study. As you may already know, the research gap is the problem that needs to be addressed in the study. This is important because no research activity is possible without the research gap. Let us suppose that your research problem or gap is mathematical anxiety can negatively affect not just the academic achievement of the students, but also their future career plans and total well-being. Also, there are no known studies that deal with the mathematical anxiety of junior high school students in New Zealand. With this, you may say, if left unchecked, as Shapiro claims, this problem will expand and create a total avoidance pattern on the part of the students, which can be expressed most visibly in the form of cutting classes and habitual absenteeism. As we can see, this will negatively affect the performance of students in mathematics. In fact, the study conducted by Luttenberger and Wimmer revealed that the outcomes of mathematical anxiety do not only negatively affect the students' performance in math-related situations, but also their future career as professionals. Without a doubt, therefore, mathematical anxiety is a recurring problem for many individuals, which will negatively affect the academic success and future career of the student. Now that you already have both explained the meaning, nature, and dynamics of the term mathematical anxiety and articulated the gap of your proposed research, you may now state the main goal of your study. And you may say, hence, it is precisely in this context that the researcher aims to determine the lived experiences of those students with mathematical anxiety. In particular, this proposed thesis aims to determine the lived experiences of the junior high school students in New Zealand and identify the factors that caused them to become disinterested in mathematics. Please note that you should not end the first paragraph of your background of the study with the articulation of the research goal. You also need to articulate the thesis statement, which usually comes after the research goal. As is well known, the thesis statement is the statement of your argument or contention in the study. It is more of a personal argument or claim of the researcher, which specifically highlights the possible contribution of the study. For example, you may say, the researcher argues that there is a need to determine the lived experiences of these students with mathematical anxiety because knowing and understanding the difficulties and challenges that they have encountered will put the researcher in the best position to offer some alternatives to the problem. Indeed, it is only when we have performed some kind of a diagnosis that we can offer practicable solutions to the problem. And in the case of the junior high school students in New Zealand who are having mathematical anxiety, determining their lived experiences as well as identifying the factors that caused them to become disinterested in mathematics are the very first steps in addressing the problem. Now, if we combine the bits and pieces that we have written, we can now come up with the opening paragraphs of your background of the study, which reads, mathematical anxiety refers to the individual's unpleasant emotional mood responses when confronted with a mathematical situation. Elliott 2020. Liu specifically identifies some of the manifestations of this type of anxiety, which include, but not limited to, depression, helplessness, nervousness, and fearfulness in doing mathematical and numerical tasks. If left to rule unchecked, as Shapiro claims, this problem will expand and create a total avoidance pattern on the part of the students, which can be expressed most visibly in the form of cutting classes and habitual absenteeism. As we can see, this will negatively affect the performance of students in mathematics. In fact, the study conducted by Luttenberger and Wimmer revealed that the outcomes of mathematical anxiety do not only negatively affect the students' performance in math-related situations, but also their future career as professionals. Without a doubt, therefore, mathematical anxiety is a recurring problem for many individuals, which will negatively affect the academic success and future career of the student. Hence, it is precisely in this context that the researcher aims to determine the lived experiences of those students with mathematical anxiety. In particular, this proposed thesis aims to determine the lived experiences of junior high school students in New Zealand and identify the factors that caused them to become disinterested in mathematics. The researcher argues that there is a need to determine the lived experiences of these students with mathematical anxiety because knowing and understanding the difficulties and challenges that they have encountered will put the researcher in the best position to offer some alternatives to the problem. Indeed, it is only when we have performed some kind of a diagnosis that we can offer practicable solutions to the problem. And in the case of the junior high school students in New Zealand who are having mathematical anxiety, determining their lived experiences, as well as identifying the factors that caused them to become disinterested in mathematics, are the very first steps in addressing the problem. Now, as we can see, we can find in the first paragraph 5 essential elements that must be articulated in the background of the study. Namely, first, a brief discussion on what is known about the topic under investigation. Second, an articulation of the research gap or problem that needs to be addressed. Third, what the researcher would like to do or aim to achieve in the study, or the research goal. Fourth, the thesis statement, that is, the main argument or claim of the paper. And lastly, the major significance or contribution of the study to a particular discipline. So that's how you write the opening paragraphs of your background of the study. The next lesson will talk about writing the body of the background of the study.
Okay. Welcome back. This was a short clip, and with few lessons that I think we may learn, we may pick from here as we learn to write backgrounds of the study. And when I was listening and trying to look for some of the, look for what to share with us today in the net, you'd find there are quite a number. You can also, at your free time, go to YouTube and Google and get some of these lessons. But in this very specific lesson, you will notice that there are some things that were summarized just here. The 5 very critical, she calls it essential elements that must be articulated in the background of your study. And she puts emphasis on the brief discussion of what is known about the topic under investigation. But even in the beginning, when she talks about preparing that writing the background, she talked about the first point was that you should have already done some literature survey in that area where you want to study, because there is nowhere you can get this information here if you've not done a bit of reading along the lines, along the of your interest. She also mentions about citation. You can only cite when you have read. Otherwise, if you've not read anything, you cannot be able to make any citation. She talks about you need to be able to articulate the research gap or the problem that needs to be addressed. It should be seen in your background. And number 3, she talks about the researcher would like to do or aim to achieve. You should show what you want to achieve, and that's the research goal. And then number 4, she talks about the thesis statement, and that is, according to her, the main argument or claim of the paper. And then finally, she also talks about the significance or your contribution. When I was just trying to prepare this, those are also some of the few things that I was able to pick. But I know after watching and listening to this, you can as well be able to share with us some few things that you've picked from there. And then we try now to see how we can relate this to the core things that were taught last Sunday. So from the screen, you see that I've put there some few things that I picked from the video. One is you should be able to conduct conduct a preliminary study on the chosen topic. You should read literature and gather the information about the research topic, but also ensure that there is a gap or the problem that you want to find a solution for. And of course, in the actual writing, we are told that we should begin with an overview of the research topic. And in here, we are looking at the definitions and descriptions of the concepts that you're looking at. And of course, highlighting the main development, the research topic. And then before you proceed to showing the gap, the problem, that's the main goal. So colleagues, can we just have some few, some little discussion on this and try to relate it to some of the things we learned last Sunday. Last Sunday, there are few things that try to think about. One of the things that came out was that you should also be able to include there what the presenters called the catastrophic statement. The presenters also talked about a sweeping statement. And then there is this other thing that the presenters talked about, and that is the style of writing, whether you're using the funnel approach. Can we try to fit some of these things in here? When they talk about funnel approach or cone-shaped approach, what exactly are they talking about? And can we fit some of these things? Can we try to pick some ideas from here and try to fit in there? When they're talking about the cone-shaped or funnel-shaped approach, what are they saying? I know in here we have people who have written these things over and over again. When they say cone-shaped funnel approach, they simply understand. And I think it is a high time you should be able to share your ideas with us. Let's begin with that. When we talk about cone-shaped, when we talk about funnel approach or whatever it is, what are they saying? If your supervisor tells you, write your background using the funnel shape or cone shape, what are they saying? That's where I want to start from. Anybody with an idea, you can just unmute and share with us. Now, remember, this is our student session. None of us knows even what is correct and what is wrong, but that does not stop us from sharing our views. We have a safety net. The professors are here, they will clear whatever errors we are going to make. So feel free and unmute and share with us when they're talking about cone-shaped funnel, whatever it is. What are they saying? What is your supervisor telling you?
Joseph.
Yes, please.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Yeah, to me, what I would pick from there is that I think the researcher should be able to consider the perspective of his problem using the broad perspective, and at the end of it, he narrows it down to the area of, for example, if it is a case, you particularly bring out what the researcher is specifically looking at and affecting a specific area of his main interest. That is what I think.
Thank you very much. I think this is my namesake.
Yes, please.
This is my namesake from Busitema. Busitema is a very serious university. The gentlemen and ladies from Busitema are very active on this forum, and I appreciate. So for him, he says you start broad and then in narrow. Now let's contextualize this. Broad, then in narrow. Aha. So somebody, these are still very big terms. He says you should start broad and then narrow. What are we narrowing? What are we broadening? Where are we? But thank you very much. You are leading us somewhere, Joseph. Thank you very much for your contribution. Can we hear from somebody else? I'm looking at my chat. I'm not seeing a hand made. Okay, there is one hand. Please go on. This is Peace. Yes, Peace. My sister, go on.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
Yes, my thinking is that the final approach is triangulation, where triangulation, you contextualize widely what others are saying, what does literature say worldwide. Then you go down the continental, go down to your region and go zero down to your area of study. What are they saying? What does literature say? I can say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peace. And I like this. You introduce another word. There is a student here who said that she is a prospective student. And then you introduce a new word called triangulation. Before you run away, Peace, can you speak to this word briefly? I have a student here who is a prospective PhD student, and you have thrown a very huge term here. Can you try to unpack this one briefly before you run away? And then I have Gordon coming up to say something. But before Gordon comes up, Peace, what is this triangulation thing? Okay. Peace might be having some technical issues, but we'll get back. Okay.
I'm saying
we couldn't hear you.
We have different approaches
okay.
in either writing or in looking at issues. So triangulation is also another approach where you begin by seeing, you overview a problem or a topic in a bigger area. You look at it in a big perspective. Then you keep on going down. What is literature? What the literature talks about it in the continental, or let me say in Africa. Then what is it in our country, in Uganda, and what is it in your area of study? So triangulation is also another approach as like final approach, my thinking. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Peace. Thank you very much for your contribution. Before I say anything, let me ask my brother Gordon. Gordon, we are here stranded. Can you save us? What is the thing? The supervisor is saying you should write in this funnel or something like that. What is this? Save us, Gordon.
Okay, my brother, also thank you.
Welcome.
I think I will first support the idea of brother Thuku and my sister Peace.
By the way, Gordon, it's
yes,
also
please.
good to let us know which university you come from so that we know we know our networks.
Okay, I'm at Makerere University.
Okay, good.
Please. Now, I was saying that the brother Thuku and my sister Peace are right. I will just add on what they've said to simplify it for us to understand the issue of funnel or cone approach. If maybe our supervisor suggests that we use that kind of approach. The funnel approach will simply mean that we look at our problem variable. We could be with our DV in this case. For instance, it could be maybe performance of universities. We look at the performance of universities in the context of global, whereby we may say that universities, maybe in America, are not performing well. We cite, we look for we get the empirical evidence suggesting that in America, which is in the global arena, universities are not performing to the expectation. Then we narrow it down, as Peace and the brothers who said, we come to other countries that could maybe developing countries. We also look at the same problem. Are the universities performing well? Of course, with evidence. And there we may now maybe narrow it further to our continent, maybe Africa in this case, and we also look at the same problem. Is it there as regards performance of universities? Then from there we move down to our context, which maybe could be Uganda. And then our area of study is the national study. That's what the final approach simply means.
Wow.
Okay, brother, thank
Gordon.
you. Yes, please.
I must thank you for your contribution. Thank you very much. I want to engage you just slightly, if it's okay with you.
Yes, please.
If I make mention of America alone,
yes,
come and also make mention of Africa.
Yes.
And then I come and make mention of Uganda.
Yes.
What am I trying to say? Am I trying to say America is global? Am I trying to say that I am now dealing at the global perspective? Or if I say in developed countries, like some parts of America, some parts of Europe, I mean, are those two statements the same? Do they all refer to global? If I say America, and I stop there, and then also if I say America and Europe, developed regions of the world, are those two statements the same?
Now, they are not the same necessarily.
So which of the two is global?
If you say global, we may consider America, that earlier said, in the global perspective. But within the global perspective, we have both developed and developing countries. Now, if you say global, yes, you may pick any country around the globe, but not within your context, of course.
Okay.
That is having the same problem. When you say developed countries and developing, we see that in America we have, we say that in the global arena, we have developed and developing countries. In that case, you need to be specific.
Okay.
When you're picking those countries. But by and large, we may not only say America. There are other countries around the globe.
Okay.
You may say it Japan. You may say it Germany. So you shouldn't limit yourself. It depends on where the problem has been identified in the global arena. Okay, thank you, my brother. Back to you.
Thank you very, very much. Again, colleagues, especially this, I have just decided to pretend that the doctors and the professors are not attending. They are not there. So this is our thing. And that's why I have just decided to engage Gordon a little further to pick his ideas. I have somebody, James hand is up. James, can you share your views with us?
Thank you, Erasu, and all members present. And I wanted to thank you for the wonderful views that are coming from the different members about what you call the funnel approach of writing the background, and also the cone approach of writing the background. So what I was just imagining in my head as members were speaking, I was looking at the real shape of the funnel and the real shape of the cone. Because as you know, when we are growing up, especially those of us who grew up from the village, the funnel is it for pouring water in the jerrycan. So the funnel will be bigger at the top, then it will be pointed towards the raw end, which we start in the jerrycan. That's what where we grew up from the village, deep in Katakwi, if you remember, you're so very aware.
Yes.
So now the shape of the funnel is pointing at your thinking. How should you be thinking when you are writing the background? The shape of the funnel is just pointing towards your thinking. So because the funnel is big at the top, then your thinking should also be like that. You should begin when you are thinking bigger. Then you keep narrowing your thinking towards, as the funnel is pointing your jerrycan, then that's where you should be towards, pointing towards the problem. Or, I mean, there's such a gap, and toward the other parts of the proposal or the text as you are writing. Then when you talk about the cone, now the cone is an inverted part, the inverted funnel that it is pointed at the top. Then the lower part of the cone is bigger. Like then we can see the panel. So now that's how you should be thinking. You should begin by either looking at Uganda here where we are standing, then you become wider as you are thinking. That's what I can say, Arasu. Adding part of the Pavlova said about the funnel shape of the proposal of the background, and also the cone shape of the background. That's what I can say, Arasu.
Yeah, thank you very much, James, for using that kind of analogy, referring to my category. But thank you very much. But James, before you go, I met one of the renowned professors over the week, and he drew for me a funnel and a cone. So he wanted to know which one is the best. If you look at if you make those things to stand, which one is the base and which one is the top? And it almost, but I like your argument. Thank you very much. Again, I am saying that at this 1 hour that we have no very correct answers and we have no very wrong answers. But I've also told you that we have the professors in here. They will clarify. I will give some minutes to them to wrap this up with some clarification on some of the things we are sharing. Dennis, Dennis Kakuba.
Yes, Joseph, are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, thank you so much, Joseph. You brought a very interesting dynamic that I had not thought about on the funnel, especially where you're asking whether, if I say in developed countries or developing countries, whether that means developed means global, and then developing means maybe continent or something. I'm looking forward to getting maybe clarification from the professors, but maybe also to add, when you talk about the funnel, from the interaction that I've had with the professors, I am a student at MOBS, and I am under the supervision of Nachaine and Professor Twaha. The funnel shape from my perspective is also to trace the problem that you're studying, to say that the problem exists right out from the international stage. It is a problem at the continental level. It is a problem at the regional level, for example, in the context of East Africa. It is a problem in Uganda, and it can as well be traced where I am. For instance, if I'm looking at southwestern Uganda, or I'm looking at central Uganda, So with the funnel shape, you're looking at the problem from the global stage. It is a problem, it is existing. You're making a trace of the problem from the bigger perspective and narrowing it down. So it is worth being researched about. That's what could also add in the funnel shape. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Dennis, and for that wonderful contribution. And of course, there's that question that you're waiting for the answer. I also don't have, but I know in the end, I have already requested Professor James to come in at some stage, and I want to interest even Professor Michael to come in at some stage. And try to address this. I want to pick one or two more students on this. We may not be able to look at the other clip, but it's the same presentation, but it was made in different places with the different examples. No, I mean the same example, but different analog. So, but this is where we are. The professor is saying, go and write your background, use the cone shape or use the funnel approach. Then you put all those things that we learned last time, catastrophic statements. We learned about sweeping statements. We learned about so many things. Now the professor is saying, go and write using the cone shape, using the funnel shape. And we are already picking a lot of ideas. And I want to interest one or two more people to share their views before the professors to put this to rest. Who is there who can have an idea to share this morning? Okay. Have we? Yes, go on. Okay. I think that's a different conversation. Can we maybe? Can we just forget about that? That's a different conversation. I think they're on something else. Is there one or two students who want to share their views? John and James from Mune, I'm running out of power. Make sure you tell your juniors to address this issue, otherwise very soon you will see me in the class. Allow me now, we have about 7 minutes. Allow me allocate some of these minutes to Associate Professor Michael to throw in some weight on this issue of funnel and cone. And then I will also give 2 minutes to Professor James, and then I will finally allow Professor Joseph to bring this to an end. Professor Michael.
Okay, thank you so much, Joseph. Thank you so much for the opportunity. My network is not very stable, but I hope I'm here.
But at least we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think what I want to highlight is that the background is a very critical part of a study because it helps the readers to critically interpret the subsequent parts of the study, and it helps you eventually bring everybody into a proper context of how your study is flowing. So it's normally very important for us to be precise here. And maybe the critical thing, which is also very important when we are putting up across our background, is that it's something which you always have to keep reflecting as you move forward, making sure that you provide people with a critical perspective of your study. I think let me stop there, Joseph, for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Michael, for your insights on the same. I would like to, I don't know if Professor James is on and could have a word or two.
Thank you, Mr. Elasu. And
Yes.
when you are talking of Professor, do you hear me, by the way?
Yes,
Can
we
you
do.
hear me?
We do, we can hear you.
When you say James, and we have two Jameses so far, times get lost. So maybe the surname would be better for me.
It's okay. Next time I will try to do.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good morning, Professor Ntai. Good morning, Associate Professor Okoche, members on call, all doctors, senior, and those joining us, and the students at large. I'm really happy to be part of this, and going back to what is under discussion, I found it very, very interesting, particularly with the analogies that have been used to explain the corn, funneling, particularly when somebody was talking of a funnel that is using putting water in the jerrycan, and that gives us different time frames because as I was growing up also, we used to have earth pots, not jerrycans. And if you wanted to make a funnel, you would get a banana leaf and roll it over and it becomes a funnel. And also we had the paraffin wax candles. And so some of these funnels were used for putting paraffin, these wax candles, because the wax candles, I mean, the paraffin candles have got narrow necks. And then today I see people eating ice cream, and some of this ice cream is served in cones. Then, of course, the other interesting part I had was from the clip actually was the mathematical anxiety, and particularly, Mr. Russell, when you're talking about if you're given the funnel and the cone, what is the base? So I wondered if you have a triangle, that's why I'm looking at mathematical anxiety. What's the base of the triangle and where is the apex? And so, Mr. Russell, if you had that funnel, would it stand alone on its tip? Or if you had a triangle and inverted it, would it stand on its apex? So, all in all, going back to the discussion, where somebody was saying when you are funneling through, you start with the broad way, then you tunnel through to the specific. And from the clip, it was very clear that you cannot write the background without having reviewed the literature. That means when you are reviewing the literature, you are already conversant with the different scholarly works. And so by reviewing that literature, you are looking at the different scholars, their viewpoints on the topic under discussion. And from the literature, you identify the gaps. And so when you're writing the background, you zero down to a gap that you have picked from the literature, and probably come down and give an example illustrating the gap or the problem identified. And then eventually you come down to your own claim. So from these discussions, I see coming from different scholars, identifying a gap, giving an example from the literature, from the reality, and then coming down to your own claim. So what am I saying? The first part was the content, unpacking the topic, using terminologies and concepts that are not necessarily defined there. And then if you remember from the clip, when this lady was unpacking mathematical anxiety. And so from the content, that content, you are not going to start defining every concept or terminology that has come out from the content, but you are able to identify a gap, which you bring out. And then you come into the context, try to explain what you meant in the content. So what I'm saying, you are having the content and then your context. Can I stop there, Mr. Rasu? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you so much. Indeed, this has been a learning point, and I'm sure students are really learning. Thank you very much, Prof. And thank you for the commitment. You're always there with us, listening to our very, very raw ideas. But thank you for being there all the time. Our time is spent. We are 3 minutes into the next session. But I had promised people that Professor Joseph Mtai will say a word. And so allow me borrow just 2 minutes from the next session so that Professor Mtai will say a word or two. But Professor, as you come to say a word or two, there are 2 things that may interest you to touch. One is Sister Peace talked of triangulation as you're writing the background. Number 2, if I pick a journal article written from Japan, and I pick another one written in Kenya here, and I pick another one written here in Uganda, do I qualify to have looked at literature from global to local? Over to you, Prof.
Thank you very much, Joseph, and also for giving us those clips that members have at least listened to, and the present or the discussions from students and also the white professor James Kagali has just said. I don't think I really have much to say, but I always emphasize one thing. Although now you are talking about Uganda and probably Kenya and Africa, personally, I think it's important always to conduct something that is very close.
We seem to have, I don't know whether it's me alone, I seem not to hear.
No,
Maybe
for me, I'm hearing Professor quite well. I think there is a problem midway.
Okay.
Professor, is it clear?
what I was saying is that I always emphasize doing something very close to a systematic literature review. I mean, you cannot say much until you know what has been done in the area, and more so studies that have been conducted from different parts of the world. So once you do your systematic literature review, you know how many studies are coming from Africa, how many studies have been done in Europe, how many studies have been done in the US, and something like that, or even Japan. So I think for me, I always believe in surveying the literature and being on top of everything. I mean, on top of everything. And then once you do that, then you can use the structure that has been given to us, and also the ideas that James has articulated. Over to you, James. Over to you.
James Erazo, are you still on board? I think he was disconnected. I don't know.
Okay, maybe Dr. Ahmad takes over. Dr. Ahmad?
I'm back now. I see it looks like I've had some technical glitch, but hello, Prof.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, thank you very much. I found myself logged out of the system. I don't know what happened, but I think I have some either network problem, but also I'm running down. My battery is running down. Thank you very much. I have missed what you said, but I'm sure my colleagues have heard. I will ask them and they will update me. We have cheated the next session by 7 minutes, and I really want to bring this to an end. Thank you very much, all the students who have attended the session, and thank you very much, Professor Michael Koche. Thank you, Professor James Kagari, and Professor Joseph Muntai, for giving us the opportunity to be able to discuss and share amongst ourselves. Thank you very much. And at this very moment, allow me now hand over to my elder brother, Dr. Walugembe. Over to you, Doctor.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Sorry, Joseph, please confirm if I'm clear.
You are clear, though a bit low. Sound is a bit low.
Okay. Members, good morning. I hope that is better.
Very good.
Welcome to our sessions, our Sunday sessions. Session 2. I would like to appreciate the team led by Joseph that has really managed the students' symposium well. The first session, we started on our discussion on the background last week, and today's discussions have actually brought out the discussion on the background more better and more detailed. Joseph, thank you very much for leading the discussions for the students' team. And we really like to appreciate you and the entire team for the time you have put into this engagement. Members, allow me to welcome you into our second session. Our discussions are also going to continue from where we stopped last week and from where Joseph's student sessions have ended on integrating theory into integrating the philosophy into the background. But before we go into that, I would like to maybe welcome those who are new on the platform. I'd like to clearly mention that this is a CSR platform that actually enables students to improve their work, improve what they do, perform better, and also progress on their PhD studies. The platform is actually run and managed by our senior colleagues, led by Professor Joseph Untai. It has been up running for the last coming to 3 years now. Professor Untai, we appreciate you and the entire team, the senior colleagues, we appreciate all of you. Dr. Dennis Msinguzi, Dr. Goret Cheyune, Dr. Michael, Professor Michael Okoche, and many others. Allow me to appreciate all the senior colleagues today on the platform who have been able to join and ready to listen in today's discussions. Dr. Austin Mwange from Zambia, we appreciate you and we welcome you to our discussions. Allow me to appreciate the senior students who actually support the platform from background, and they're doing a great job in ensuring that this platform moves ahead. Joseph Erasu, thank you very much. My colleagues Charles Olupot, Bernard Wapkara, and colleagues who have been able to support, like Arakit, congratulations, now she graduated. To show that she's soon graduating with her PhD. We appreciate you very much. Dr. Hassan Bashir down there, Professor James Kagari, thank you very much for being part of the platform today, and many other colleagues whom I may not be able to see, who have been able to join and have been giving support to the platform over years. We appreciate all the students. The platform attracts students from the rest of the world, but mainly from the African continent. Those from Kenya, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Rwanda, Burundi, those from the North Africa and West Africa, Egypt, Nigeria. There are so many Nigerians and Egyptians who are able to join and be part of the platform. We appreciate our students from Asia, especially Radha, I hope she's on today, from Nepal. She's a regular attendee of the platform, and some others from the United Kingdom. We appreciate your presence and your participation in the platforms. Thank you, and we really think that with this concentrated and committed work, we hopefully we can actually go ahead and achieve the best out of this. Right, as we proceed in today's discussion, Dr. Edith, you're welcome. I didn't see you, and Dr. Goret Cheyune, thank you very much. As we proceed in our discussions today, we are going to have a look at integrating philosophy in the background. You're aware that one of our key personality and the person has actually been exceptional in the area of philosophy on this platform over the years has been Dr. Dennis Msinguzi. Dr. Dennis Msinguzi has presented work on philosophy here several times, and he's outstanding out there in the area of understanding and integrating into our areas of study. Dr. Dennis last week was on a panel with Dr. Hassan Bashir when we were trying to introduce the concept of the background. How do you write a very good background of study? This week, he's coming to unpack the issue of integrating philosophy in the background. And I think this is one of the areas, if you have published, that so many papers have been really sent back to you to really look at your philosophical angle and improve it. Your writing style is weak because of the poor philosophical approach that you have used in the background. And so many of us have got these problems in writing the background of the study. So allow me, I'll really invite Dr. Dennis Msinguzi. Dr. Msinguzi at the moment works with Uganda Matters University and many other universities that he actually gives support through that. So Dr. Msinguzi, you are expert and we would like to hear from you. Many of our colleagues will come in later to be able to come and join us later on. Apologies from our own professor who doesn't miss here, Professor Arola Orobia, who lost her auntie and she's away for burial. Dr. Demson Msinguzi, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Walugembe. Our deepest sympathies to Professor Orobia on the passing of her auntie. We keep her in mind and prayer as we pray for the departed to rest in peace. When I came in, today I came in a bit late, and I found when Professor Kagari was presenting views about the background, and I realized how well sessions fed into each other. And in fact, I missed the first session. Joseph Erazu, you should you should pardon me this morning that I came in a bit late. As you are saying that we are cheating this session, I thought it wasn't cheating because the first session was actually feeding well into this one. And well, I wished it had moved on, but it's fine. We we are going to pick it from there. I'm going to share just a few ideas, and as Dr. Walugembe has noted, eventually our colleagues will also come in. In fact, at the end of my presentation, I would be interested even to hear from senior students. There are students who have been on the course for more years, and there are those who have just joined. So if we could hear some experience from, from students. Can I request other people to switch off their microphones? There's some interferences. Yes, I was saying I would be interested to hear from senior colleagues, but also senior students, not just asking questions, but sharing their experience on how far they have struggled or mastered, the inclusion of philosophy into their studies, and the experiences from other people. Let me see if I can share. I'm not going to make kind of a detailed presentation. I'm sharing some views. As Dr. Walugembe has mentioned, I have presented before on philosophy, and yes, I was not sure, if there are new students, how much do they know about philosophy? So I picked a few views here and there to try to make a coherent kind of approach that would enable us to see then how do we begin reflecting on philosophy when we are writing our background. So that's what I'm going to reflect on, so that we can see how do we pick it from there, and how do we inform a background, especially as far as philosophy is concerned. As Dr. Walugembe has said, I'm Dennis Msinguzi. I officially from Uganda Matters University. And again, as Mr. Walugembe has mentioned, yes, last week we had a panel conversation, and I'm keeping it in that format, only that I'm now a single panelist. Yeah, last week we looked at the purpose of the background. I mean, we looked at the background. What does the background entail, and what are the elements in the background? So we talked about the purpose of the background. We talked about the different elements that constitute, the background, especially when we talk about the contextual perspective that brings, the reader to the real issue on the ground. We talked about the historical background, and we said there is a tendency now within the community of scholars of integrating theorization with historicization, because when you historicize events, you are able to follow through to see how things have evolved from different geographies, from different epochs, periods of time, to the present, so that you can bring the past experiences into the current practices and get a better research. As Professor Antai, Elasso, you missed Professor Antai, but he was insisting. Yes, you asked the question whether we should go global, whether we should go continental, whether we should go regional and country. And his view was it is always good to have that systematic review of literature so that you ably inform yourself about different experiences and be able to have a strong standpoint that is going to help you make assumptions, have your objectives, and have the direction of your research when you are richly informed with the deeper, literature review. Yes, we talked about, the importance of theoretical perspectives in the background, and we even went into particular issues. How should we introduce the background? How should it be structured? Should the background reflect the objectives and the significance of the study? Should it reflect literature review? What about the methodological approaches? This was a conversation, and yes, we shared our views, and the audience added on the views. And as we were doing this, I shared the example of Bruce Berg, who talks about the kind of approaches to research that different scholars and different universities take. He said that those who approach research from a linear, point of view, that you are going to have a problem, you will gather literature, you will generate the methodology, you will get the findings. And this reflects even the way we teach methodology. There is a colleague of ours, and the first question he gives to the students, he says, please write a detailed background. And I was wondering, no, how are you going to write a background if you do not have a problem statement, if you do not have the objectives yet? Why don't we begin with the problem and maybe go to the objectives and then move backwards to the background? And as the presentation has shown today, dear students, the background is something that, that is continually enriched, and you will write a better background even after you have presented your findings and even made conclusions and recommendations. So now the question will be, if we are going to integrate philosophy, we shouldn't get worried right from the beginning that, I have to be clear with my philosophy in order to have a clear background. It is work in progress. But at the end of it all, how should, philosophy be reflected in the background, which is our conversation today. We are talking about how to integrate philosophy in the background. So as we are talking about how to integrate philosophy in the background, we should bear in mind the elements of the background. We talked about the contextual perspective. Can you introduce some philosophy there? We talked about historical perspectives. Can you introduce some philosophy there? In the theoretical perspectives, can you introduce, a bit of philosophy? How is philosophy going to integrate with theories and with some of these elements? And that's why I'm bringing it back. In the end, that's where we shall be, thinking. How do we bring, philosophy? Dr. Walugembe has ably mentioned, if the philosophy of your research is not clear, you will hardly be clear on many other aspects of your philosophy. I will talk about the misconceptions about philosophy. Some people will say we have always written the successful researches even without a philosophy. So whether with philosophy or not, you can still have a research. Well, may be true, but how congent, how coherent, how, you know, persuasive and convincing it is. Maybe you applied some philosophy without being conscious about it. So we shall talk about what is philosophy, so that then we know briefly about, you know, what it is, especially for the new students. I bring in the misconceptions about philosophy so as to maybe speak to our own situation today and the ideal situation when we have mastered philosophy and looked at its importance in the context of research. Then I am borrowing again from 2 case studies. There is a case study which I shared yesterday on the platform, where the writer, you know, is talking about bringing philosophy into the doctor of philosophy. We are getting a PhD, and PhD in full is doctor of philosophy. Whether you are doing mathematics, whether you are doing business, whether you are doing management studies, the question is, where is philosophy in your doctoral of philosophy degree that you are getting? Can we, you know, begin reflecting? We shall talk about that. Then importance of philosophy. Why do we need this philosophy? And I'll be talking about the importance in the context of how to integrate, you know, philosophy in the background to the study. As a way of introduction, this is something that I usually share with my students when I'm going to introduce the course unit on philosophy of science. And it is just to remind ourselves, even when I'm teaching bachelor's and master's, I don't want to begin teaching students whose expectations and experiences I don't know. If it is a master's class, I'm going to ask you, what did you do at bachelor's? What have you done in life? Why are you choosing this master's? What are your expectations, you know, of this? So that then my teaching reflects the experiences and expectations of students. So on the side of students, you do not just come to do a PhD, you know, for the sake of it. Even if it is for the sake of it, there is a purpose that is attached to that. There is a colleague of mine who applied for a PhD scholarship, and when they were, you know, interacting with the people who were supposed to award the scholarships, and the person was giving some kind of a mini interview, and he said, "You guys, why are you interested in doing a PhD?" Someone said, "No, for me, I want to do it for prestige. You know, I respect people with PhDs, and I also want to have it as a title on my name." Some other people were not even sure why they are doing PhDs. I'm raising this to underscore the fact that when you are coming for a PhD, you are up to a very serious job. So to the students, you must be very clear. What are your expectations of a PhD? How are your expectations feeding into your previous experience and shaping the way you are looking at the future? But to underscore, you know, what PhD is and, you know, what it entails, I tell people, let us reflect, you know, briefly on our education background. And I use the case of Uganda's education system. When I joined school, I didn't go through nursery. I moved directly to primary school. But recently, pre-primary, which we also call nursery school, you know, has become a stage in our education. And I see kids graduating, you know, at the end of nursery school. But I ask people, when we talk about nursery, if you are an agriculturist or a practicing farmer, we know a nursery is a place where we prepare seedlings before we transform them to the main garden. So I think the idea of a nursery is a phase of preparation. So initially it was supposed to be a preparation phase before kids join the mainstream, you know, education system. But currently it has become part of the mainstream. We no longer call it nursery, we call it pre-primary, you know, as a phase into the education system. So being a preparatory phase, it has its own content. and it has its own focus. It has its own objectives on what we are giving to these students. Now, when you finish the nursery and you come to primary school, again, the question is, what is primary? Primary is basic. It is elementary. It is the starting point. So in primary, I even like the way the curriculum is structured. You know, in P1, you will talk about, you know, the person and the family, the mother, the father, the uncle, and the what. When you go to P2, they will take you to the sub-county, they will take you to the district. When you go to P3, you are going to the country. You know, that is how the curriculum of primary is structured. By the time you go to P4, you have started talking about East Africa and some elements of Africa and some elements of religion, even beyond. Why is the curriculum structured like that? Because just like we write the background, the education is giving the background capacities to enable this learner at a later stage to begin grappling even with more complex issues of society as we are moving on. When you go to P5, P6, you start talking about East Africa and Africa. When you, I mean, that is primary, but it is still basic. Others call it elementary education. So it is still at the starting point. And when we complete primary school, I think that's why they were calling it secondary stage. We go to the second stage, which is secondary stage. And this secondary stage has both ordinary level and it has advanced level. I ask students, if someone called you ordinary, is it a compliment or it is an abuse? If someone says, oh, you man, you are too ordinary. Of course, ordinary has the positive and negative connotation. The positive connotation is an ordinary person is someone, you know, who likes to be humble, to be simple, to take life easy, to integrate with everybody. But other people will associate ordinary, you know, with some element of backwardness, with the element of illiteracy, you know, the people that we see on the ground. And someone will say, no, I am not ordinary. So that is the first level ordinary. Now, when you move from the ordinary, you go to advanced level. The advanced, you know, advanced sounds even more convincing than ordinary. You are now advanced in knowledge. You are also getting advanced in age. You are becoming advanced in the way you understand and address society's problems. So the framers of our education system meant that at the end of A level, you are no longer an ordinary citizen, you are now an advanced citizen who can understand society's problems, who can address society's problems, who can, I mean, make a significant contribution to the well-being of the society. And little wonder that according to our constitution, according to our laws, when you have completed A level, you can become even a president of the country. You can become a minister. You can become a member of parliament. A level is the basic requirement for all those, you know, senior positions. Now we are going to ask ourselves, does our education prepare A level leavers to live up to that kind of task? The answer can be yes or no. If it is no, then it means either our education system is letting us down or it is us who are letting the education system down. And people, especially in education, but even in other fields, are we able, you know, to have A level leavers who are up to the task? And that's who are at the university. When we receive students in year 1 of the university, how do we look at them? Do we look at them as confused people, as young people who are not knowledgeable, as kids who are ignorant, as kids who are indisciplined, as responsible adults? And what kind of approaches do we use? But, I mean, this is for reflection. This is for reflection. When we move away from A level, we go to the university. I ask people, my students, look at the word university. Which other concepts do we get out of university? I heard we are talking about, you know, defining the concepts in our background, in our study. From the university, we have universal, we have universe. And I tell my students at the university level, you are becoming a global citizen. Global citizen means you have the global knowledge, you have global expertise that can help you stay in any part of the world. Whether you are thrown in America, you should be able to survive. Whether you are thrown in India or whichever part of the world, because now you've become a global citizen. But just like any other level, university also has levels. The lowest level, we have bachelor's, which we call, the bachelor's degree. So in the bachelor's, even the word bachelor's, I tell my students, what does the word bachelor connote in ordinary life? The word bachelor relates with someone who is not yet married. And I ask my students, if you've become 30 or 35 in the society and you are still a bachelor, what does society think about you? The uncle and the auntie will begin questioning. You are alone. Are you not seeing anybody? Have you failed to get someone to marry or to get married to? Even the word bachelor in the ordinary language is something that is questioned, is something that is not respected. When Dr. Walugembe reaches, 30, the aunt will begin getting worried. The father and mother will begin getting worried. So I tell students, even in our education system, you realize that even if you've attained the bachelor's, in the intellectual growth, you are still a baby. You are still young. We want more from you. And that's why after bachelor's, you will go for a master's. And I say at the master's level, you have become an expert. You have become a consultant in the field. You have mastered your field that you can be able, to deal with it in any way it comes your way. You have become a master. You have become an expert. You've become a consultant. Now, what does that mean? That the moment you leave a master's and you are coming to PhD, no wonder PhD was always looked at as the highest level. Recently, we have post-PhDs, post-doctoral, programs. But PhD was looked at as the highest. You get a PhD, so you are the most educated, the most intelligent, you are up there. But also to unpack PhD, I say, okay, we have two concepts. We have philosophy and we have doctor. I say, then let us reflect on doctor in ordinary life. When we talk about a doctor, and I'm talking about a medical doctor, what are the expectations of you of a doctor? When you have a headache, you want to see a doctor. When you have stomachache, you want to see a doctor. When you break your leg, you want to see a doctor. When you become pregnant, you want to see a doctor. When you are anything. So doctors are there to solve problems. They are there to solve problems. Meaning at the PhD level, we are also expecting that as a PhD person, you are a leader in identifying problems in your field, in supplying solutions to the problems in your field. And that's why when I talked about expectations, when I'm receiving PhD students, that is the expectations that I have. You've gone through the education system, you did your bachelor's, you've become a master in your field. Now you want to become a doctor in your own field, a doctor of mathematics. You can solve all the mathematical problems. A doctor in business. You can review Uganda's business environment and advise Uganda Investment Authority and the Ministry of Trade on how to turn around, especially in the eradication of poverty. That is the expectation of a PhD. You are a doctor in your field. But besides that, we also have philosophy. And I said, I'm going to ask at one moment, where is philosophy in your philosophy of education? Where is philosophy? Where is this philosophy? Now, for the sake of the beginners, we said we need to reflect a bit. When we say philosophy, what is it and what does it entail? And I'm using a dictionary definition. This is Oxford Dictionary definition. I mean at the lowest level. And we say philosophy is the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence. Knowledge knowledge is there, fundamental nature of knowledge. It is not basic knowledge, it is not surface knowledge, it is the fundamental nature of knowledge. Sometimes we know things from the surface and we call ourselves, experts in that field. But as Professor Ntai was mentioning, when you begin reading literature, when you begin sharing experiences, then you begin to realize how ignorant you have actually been, even when you are posing as an expert. Professor, that's why I don't like the word expert, Professor Dr. Walugembe. I don't like the word expert because for me, I think expert is work in progress. You might think that you are expert, but the world is moving very fast. And there are so many things that you discover you really don't know. And that's why we have research, searching again. Research, I tell students, read and then search, searching again. You continue searching and searching and searching. And that's why we talk about publications and articles and publishing, because to remain an expert, you must keep updated. So the fundamental nature of knowledge, how it has manifested at different times in different contexts and in different realities, and the kind of contribution, if you are doing research, the kind of contribution that you are going to give as far as the gaps and your contribution is concerned. So we are looking at the knowledge, but this is knowledge of reality, knowledge of something. And I'm emphasizing this because when we begin talking about philosophy of our research, we are talking about what knowledge are you generating in your research? What kind of reality are you interfacing with? What kind of reality? And you can realize that these first two concepts is where we get the key terms that we usually juggle around in philosophy, because knowledge is epistemology, reality is ontology. I mean, these are the words that we use. And then the existence, you are dealing with knowledge, you are dealing with the reality, you are dealing with existence. And the fundamental, at the fundamental level, not at the surface level. That is the basic definition of philosophy. So because of that, philosophy is about critical thinking, critical thinking. It's not surface thinking. It is thinking that is deep. It is thinking that is profound. It is thinking that wants to go at the base of reality so that you can understand it and explain it and even improve it. Because that is the aim of research. It is to improve things. It is to make things better. So it is a deeper reflection. Everybody thinks. Everybody thinks, but not everybody thinks critically. Not everybody thinks deeply. Sometimes we operate at the level of stereotypes. Yeah, and we make assumptions which are not based on critical thinking. And we shall be making statements. I have been a part-time lecturer at this university. I've not been given a full-time job because of tribalism. And you are a university lecturer. Have you interrogated that? Is it actually because of tribalism or because you are not, as excellent as they need in that faculty at that particular time? So sometimes we make some of these sweeping things without deeper reflection. And philosophy is about problem solving. And so is research, because research is also about problem solving. It's not that every research is problem solving, but it's about improving, understanding things better and approaching them better. And yes, making improvements. We can call it solving problems. So, and because we are operating in a knowledge economy, we say a PhD student is not just a mere consumer of knowledge. A PhD student is a producer of knowledge. In fact, we even begin from masters, where you do research and you defend it before a competent panel. So even at the PhD level, I mean, if we don't do it at masters and PhD, who is going to produce the knowledge for us that we are going to consume in our education system? So that's why we have the emphasis on research. A PhD student, you're not just a consumer of knowledge, reviewing literature and blah, blah. You also want to contribute to this knowledge. And because you want to contribute to this knowledge, it means you must be guided by a clear philosophy in terms of how you describe and understand your field. You understand the reality that you're going to interrogate with, how coherently you structure it, and how eventually you get a coherent and relevant methodology and then come to the findings. It is a continuous whole. And we shall do this when we have some deeper presentations on methodology. You know, the tradition on knowledge productivity has kind of broadly divided under two tendencies. We have the tendency which subscribes to the point of view that knowledge exists out there and your role as a researcher is to discover it. And that is oriented more to the quantitative, philosophies. Knowledge exists, your role is to discover it. Others are saying, no, knowledge does not exist. Even when it exists, it may not exist in a perfect way. So we construct it. We produce it by constructing it. These are the two broader perspectives that actually inform the philosophies of the researches that we undertake. And we do this knowing that we have our areas of specialization, whether it is business, whether it is, and I'm raising all these because when you are writing the background, we want this kind of depth, the reflection in terms of explaining your reality, having the clear knowledge basis as we are going to establish at the end. And yes, for the students who are interacting with the philosophy for the first time, all not so deeply before. Philosophy, literally we call it the love for knowledge or the desire to know, philos and sophia. But it has different branches. And when you understand these branches, you will be able to know, how do I bring philosophy into my background? And the first branch of philosophy is metaphysics. Beyond, we have the physical and non-physical world that we are relating with. So meta is beyond, but there is also physical. So metaphysical, we have the physical and non-physical reality that we relate with. And the concern for the metaphysicists is about understanding the nature of the world and understanding the nature of reality. Cosmology is the world, is the universe. Cosmos is Greek, cosmos. It is the world, it is the universe. Ontology is the nature of reality. In your specialized fields, whether it is in management, there is ontology of management. Whether it is a business administration, there is a way how reality plays out within the context of business. I said at the PhD level, you are a doctor. We had COVID and the business environment has declined. How are the schools of business, conducting overarching researches and providing guidance on how to recover the economy? How much, do universities inform the national development strategies, the development plans? I mean, this is the role that the universities should be playing. Unfortunately, in Uganda, in Africa, education, the education institutions have not played as much role. When you go to Europe and America, you realize that governance policy is dependent on overarching researches from the centers within universities. So that is to understand the nature of the world. How has COVID affected the business world? What are some of the immediate threats to business, and what are the needed interventions for economic recovery? And how should, business schools, management schools, and the investment schools be interacting at that level? And that's what we should be doing, whether we actually doing something. We can only do this better if we have the clear knowledge system, the epistemology. Philosophy is about the theory of knowledge, especially when it comes to how do you get the knowledge in terms of methods? How do you validate the knowledge, the validity of the knowledge? What is the scope of the knowledge? And you realize these are the things that we have even in chapter 1 of our background. When you are talking about the validity of the study, when you are talking about the scope of the study, you are actually talking about the philosophy, the knowledge basis of your research. If you cannot describe the scope of your study, then you have no business conducting that study. If you cannot get the right methods, and it is philosophy that is going to help you, understand that at the epistemological level. Epistemology is the nature of knowledge. Ontology is the nature of reality. But the nature of knowledge intersects with the nature of reality. And you are able to understand reality in a better and more persuasive way. We also have the logic. Logic is about theory and nature of valid reasoning. The way we reason, the way we make assumptions, all hypotheses. And remember, someone was asking, when we were discussing last week, should the background also reflect the methodological approaches? So when we talk about the nature of reasoning, we are talking about what kind of evidence there is. The kind of assumptions and the hypotheses you are making, the kind of evidence Professor Kagari was insisting. You need to review literature in order for you to have a powerful background so that you are able to get the assumptions that underlie your field. You are able to get the problems, and the issues that underlie the problem. And so it is about reasoning, it is about thinking, it's about inferences and deductions. When you are doing literature review, yes, it is a review, it's not just a narration. You are critiquing it to understand the key ideas that are emerging, to understand the gaps that are existing, to look at the critique of different scholars. This is something that requires systematic thinking, systematic reasoning. And we shall be asking ourselves, do you need logic in the background? Yes, you need it. Do you need clarity of the problem that you are dealing with and the knowledge that informs it? Definitely you need it. Other aspects of philosophy is axiology, which is ethics, about values. We talk about doctoring literature to suit your perspective. There are some students who will get literature, it is not clearly related, but they are tampering with it, to create the link. Ethics. Some students will get ideas because they cannot remember where they got the book from. They simply put an author just to show that they have a quotation. It's about ethics. Research is a highly disciplined enterprise. If you approach it casually, you create mayhem, especially in the knowledge productivity. You will produce knowledge, but when it is toxic knowledge. Why? Because you are tampering with the literature review. You are tampering with the methodology. You are tampering with the findings. Yes, sometimes when students are writing the section on ethical issues, so for me, I usually say, no, ethics goes beyond confidentiality and voluntary participation. It also goes to you, how do you deal with the knowledge and the information that you've received? How do you analyze it? That is axiology. It is ethics. Ethics is key in research, and people sometimes play around with the literature. They play around with findings when things do not add up, and that's why we have the contestations between quantitative and qualitative. People in quantitative think they are more objective. Those in qualitative think they are deeper and more, and sometimes that's why we go for the mixed method. So axiology, and so in your background, it's where you are giving information about your assumptions, about your objectives, about your problem, and the conceptual frames. How realistic are you when you are writing your background? We also talk about aesthetics, which is about beauty. I was teaching a class that was largely business-oriented students, and I asked them, how is aesthetics relevant to business? Many of them scratched their heads and they say, no, we cannot see the link. I said, let us begin from the simple reality. When you go to a shop selling phones, when you go to a shop selling computers, do you mind about the display of things? Yes, people mind that when you enter a shop, you say, wow, it is beautiful, it is captivating, things are properly arranged, there is a place where to sit, there are corridors where to pass, there is where you can look and view. And if you do not introduce aesthetics, you may not be able to succeed in business. But you know, these are the things. So when you are describing the nature of reality, when you are problematizing your research, do you care about ethics? Do you care about aesthetics, about the beauty of how you are going, you know, to make that kind of presentation? So I'm talking about these branches of philosophy because for me, they are key when you are going to integrate philosophy in the background. What is the kind of reality that you are dealing with in your research? If the reality is not clear, research is going to be problematic. What is the knowledge that is informing this reality? If you are not clear on the assumptions, on the positions, on the elements that your research is going to deal with, it is going to be problematic. If you are not having clear expressions, clear argumentation, clear way of adducing evidence, then relating evidence to your arguments, you are not going to write a very good background. So you will need to integrate, you know, some level of philosophy so as to get, you know, that kind of clarity. As we are doing all of this, you know, we are simply saying, no, Dr. Msengus is joking. Philosophy is complex. You know, philosophers are confused. And we used to have, you know, terrible philosophers and professors. You know, they explain things. When you ask a question, he says, no. The role of a professor is to confuse you so that you unconfuse yourself. And because of that, some people think philosophy is a waste of time and one cannot even make a good living from it. Philosophy is a waste of time. It is a dead subject. I was a panelist on the philosophy day in Makerere in November last year. And someone from admissions says, yes, students got philosophy as a last resort. Sadly, that students choose philosophy as a last resort because they do not have anything else to do. And yet, for me, my argument was actually philosophy should be a cross-cutting course across all the courses in the university, whether it is medicine, whether it is business, whether it is geography and history. We need a dose of philosophy. And we can only do that if we explain, you know, the relevance, the misconceptions, even among doctors and highly educated people, is that philosophy is useless. Is it useless? Certainly not. Others think that philosophy is just baseless speculation. You cannot even use quantitative, you know, things to justify. These are misconceptions. How do we get over these misconceptions? Some people think that the point of philosophy, you know, is to try to find answers to unanswerable questions, questions that you cannot answer. People think that is philosophy. No, that is not philosophy. People think that philosophy has no application in the real world. And this is the worst, you know, of the misconceptions. Because for me, I say, if you are a student, especially at the university level, what is your philosophy as a student? You came to study and you want to complete this course. And you know, for you to complete this course, you must dedicate your time. You must attend class, you must have discussion groups, you should submit coursework in time. That is the philosophy of a student who is going to succeed. If you want to be successful in business, you must have a clear philosophy of, I mean, what kind of business do I want? The nature of reality. You are not trading in anything. Of course, you are going to use business rules in order for you to determine that. But if you do not have a clear philosophy, what is the philosophy as far as service delivery is concerned? Is it only about profit, or it is also about giving a service to your clients? So the client relationships will be determined according to your philosophy. If you are a lecturer, we talk about what is your teaching philosophy as a lecturer. How do you view education? How do you view a learner? How do you view your role as a facilitator? And how do you package your pedagogical approaches in order to achieve that purpose? If you do not have a clear philosophy of teaching, It means you'll just go to class because the university employs you. So for me, philosophy applies in every aspect of life. Every aspect of life. Philosophy is life itself. But some people will be saying, no, philosophy is just complex and useless. It is up there. Somehow philosophy is only useful until science steps in. And of course, when we are doing philosophy of science, we are looking at the link between science and philosophy. And you realize that philosophy seems to be the overriding. And even natural sciences have a philosophical approach that they are using, to understanding their reality. Some people think that philosophy has never been postulated. I mean, that if something has never been postulated or developed by a knowledge philosopher, then it is not worth considering. Sometimes we have our own simple philosophies, even if it may not necessarily be best. But of course, as scholars, yes, there is some level. That's why we view literature. That's why we view the ideas of others. They seem to be a bit negative. There are also people who think that logic, which we said is a branch of philosophy, always results in true conclusions. And that was my emphasis. If you have clarity in terms of thinking, if you have clarity in terms of reasoning, if you have clarity in terms of, adducing evidence to support your assumptions and getting conclusions, then you will be more persuasive. Others think that everyone in philosophy is a genius or is original. I don't know. Some people think that by quoting free thinkers, then you automatically also become a free thinker and an intelligent. These are some of the misconceptions, all assumptions about philosophy. And maybe some of us as students, we already have some of these misconceptions. How are we going to overcome them so that then we allow philosophy its rightful place, especially in our research? And as we shall see, philosophy is not just an aspect in methodology. It's an aspect that permeates the study from the beginning up to the end. Today we are talking about the background. Maybe we also need to talk about, how it relates with theories, how it relates with the findings, how it relates with, because the philosophical assumptions are the cross-cutting, the underlying ingredient that you need from the beginning, up to the end of your philosophy. I said I have two case studies. One is the article that I shared last evening. I know some people have read it before. That's why I said, if you've read it before, please read it again. And the article that I shared yesterday, do we have someone who read it and switch on the microphone and tell us what they picked from the article? Let me liberalize my presentation today. Do we have anyone who read the article that I shared on WhatsApp last evening by Gundla Bosch? Yeah? Okay, I'm not seeing you. If you read it, please. Yeah, why am I using this? Previously, yes, in my next slide, previously, we talked about there is some little interference. Can people administering help us? Yes. The article that I shared yesterday is written by Gundla Bosch, and it is in the World View, and is giving a personal take on events. Interestingly, she is from biomedical sciences. In fact, she's a director of a program of PhD in biomedical sciences. And her concern is that the curriculum of most of their program has been shortened so as to allow students concentrate, on the core courses of biomedical sciences so as to graduate very quickly. I mean, you need a PhD in 2 or 3 years, and you say, why are we troubled with the philosophy of science? Why are we troubled with the epistemology? Why are we? No, let us, if it is business, we teach the elements of business. If it is specialization in finance, we give course in finance, and students get the PhD and they move on. And Gundla was realizing that that kind of approach was producing subject specialists, but who are not critical thinkers, who are not thinkers, who cannot go beyond what the subject is presenting to relate it with the broader society. And because of that, she is saying no, by making it highly specialist and removing the cross-cutting courses, we have removed philosophy in the Doctor of Philosophy. And he's saying, can we put back the philosophy into the Doctor of Philosophy? That is her concern. And he wants a PhD to train students who are critical thinkers, who are not just subject specialists. You might be a subject specialist, but you get lost in the real world when you begin working. Because finance is more than the finance content, it's about social relations, it's about managerial decisions, it's about accountability. And as I was reflecting that, I was wondering, are we also having some similar challenges in some of our universities? Yes, we do have some of these challenges. Sometimes in terms of rigor, in terms of depth, in terms of systems for training students, we have some challenges. So not just subject specialists, but people who can trace their subject matter into a broader kind of society. I've talked about the philosophy day in Makerere. I was saying one of the other challenge, the structure challenge, is the way how universities are structured. If someone wants to teach business administration, they will say, we want you to have a bachelor's in business administration, a master's in business administration, a PhD in business administration. If you want to teach political science, they say, we want you to have a bachelor's in social sciences, a master's in political science, a PhD in political science. This in bleeding. But at the philosophy level, don't we need some kind of cross-cutting and you know, some interactivity with other? If I have done a master's, a bachelor's in business administration and a master's, can't I do a PhD in a different but related field and still be useful so how much do we need to allow, you know, other, you know, special areas to come into our areas of specialization? So for her, she's saying, although we are teaching biomedical program, we also need some cross-cutting elements in epistemology. Yeah, we are going to see what we'll see. Yes, in ethics, because she says we need some level of rigor and social responsibility as biomedical you know, specialists. And because of that, we need some level of interdisciplinarity. And she had introduced the interdisciplinary courses in ethics, in epistemology, in quantitative skills. And some colleagues were becoming very uncomfortable. And she's saying, okay, we have not yet done proper evaluation, but there seems to be some kind of improvement. Why? Preliminary, she's realizing that an interdisciplinary kind of discussion, the discussion series, they encourage the broader and critical thinking about science. It's not only about computer programming, it is also about computer in a broader society. You teach some level of ethics. Ethics is philosophy. Epistemology is philosophy. And this is, I mean, one example. And she's saying, by removing these interdisciplinary courses, we are producing subject robots who may not be able to relate better in a broader society. I wish you had read it. Previously, we had the case of Russia, Shrine, who was talking about how philosophy made me a better scientist. She was also in sciences, and she appreciated the critical and creative thinking, the logic, which I've already talked about, the systematic and methodic approach that philosophy introduces. She was talking about the importance of ethics and values, and she is indeed saying that philosophy shaped her career you know, as someone who was in quantum science, if we have people testifying, even from the medical sciences, what about us who belong closely to the social sciences where philosophy is? It means, and in my argument tonight, is that we need to establish the strong link that exists between philosophy and scientific inquiry, irrespective of the field of study. Don't say, for me, I'm doing business. What business do I have with philosophy? Don't say, for me, I'm doing a computer programming. What business do I have for philosophy? But you are doing a PhD. It's a doctor of philosophy. Where is philosophy in your philosophy of computer science, doctor of philosophy in computer science? And I'm saying that philosophy goes beyond methodology. I've said this before. It runs through the entire study. How you describe the subject of your study, how you describe the realities of your study, how you systematically present that knowledge of reality in identifying the existing issues, the existing gaps. You are actually using philosophy in your research. Every research has a philosophy. And this philosophy informs the study approach. It even informs the formulation of the problem and the methodology of the study and the analysis of the findings. It cuts across. And when the philosophy is clear, then even the research is going to become a little more clearer. And philosophy is the key determinant of the study problem or the opportunity of the reality of the complex reality. Remember, as a PhD person, student, you want to make a contribution in a given reality, but reality is complex. So in order for you to ably address the complex reality, then it means you need some level of philosophy on how to deal with this complexity. Again, when I was doing my PhD, I used the scholar at the University of Notre Dame. At one moment, he talks about the complexity and the simplicity. And he says, many times scholars and researchers are kind of overwhelmed by the complex reality. And then they forget that this complex reality is made up of simple elements that constitute the complexity. For him, the complexity is the summation of simplistic kind of assumptions. So philosophy helps you to unpack this complex reality, deal with the elements of reality, and even empowers you to make a decision. And that is the beauty of academic research. You can say, okay, my study is in this field, but you make the limitations and say, I'm not going to focus on this, I will focus on this. Even when you are reviewing literature, you say, okay, the scholar is addressing this. This does not apply in my context. I am picking this, which is, so we have that level of freedom in academic to determine even our own scope. But you cannot determine the scope if you do not have the clear reasoning, the clear logicality, the clear kind of argumentation, which philosophy brings to the philosophy of science and the philosophy of education. I mean, the philosophy of research. This is my last slide. This is my last slide. We are kind of summing up and bringing these things together. If we have understood what philosophy is, can we make an argument that philosophy should be integrated in the background? I think the answer is overwhelming yes. But I'm saying it can be there either implicitly or even explicitly. Implicit is that philosophy should be implicit across the way you identify issues, the way you identify problems and hypotheses, the way you choose to become quantitative and not qualitative. Remember, we're asking, should the background reflect even the methodological approaches? So, in other words, philosophy is going to give you the capacity to make decisions as far as your problem is concerned, as far as your scope is concerned, as far as your objectives are concerned. All these are function of philosophy. Someone might be asking, how is that possible? We go back to ontology, the clarity in the nature of reality that you are studying, the nature of reality that you are studying. I've given this example before. A student is doing business innovations among the business people, and is lost and confused. How do I determine the ontology? How do I determine the epistemology? These things are very difficult. And deliberately, I invite him to my place. And I said, we are going to meet at the stage in front of this building. I said, you are doing research on business. Look in front, look at the side, at the left, look at the right, look at where you are, look at the left, look at the right. You are telling us you are doing business innovation. A case of Chengera Town Council. We are standing in front of a bank. A bank is a business. In front of us, there is a supermarket. A supermarket is a business. Below the supermarket, there is a butcher. There is a lady selling tomatoes and vegetables. It is also a business. On the other side of the supermarket, there is a pharmacy. Below some buildings, there is a petrol station. So if you say business innovation is in Chengera, it's meaningless. It doesn't make sense because business is not homogeneous. Business is plural, and it is complex. We have different businesses at different levels dealing with the different things. If you've not understood that reality, you will continue getting lost. You will not have a methodology because you don't know even what you are dealing with. So I said, ontology is the nature of reality. And the nature of business reality in Chengera is that it is a complex reality. We have different businesses at different levels. And innovations cannot be the same in terms of knowledge. So if you begin then understanding that, you realize how sweet philosophy is, very sweet, very interesting. And you can replicate that example to any other example. The nature of reality of business. So then can you be able to tell us which business you are focusing on and why? The innovations in the bank are different from the innovations in the supermarket, maybe different from the petrol station. Some of these people selling foodstuffs and the mobile money business, they may not have made any innovations. So it's understanding the nature of business that you are going to understand the nature of the problem that you are dealing with. Without understanding the nature of the problem, the nature of reality, you have no business conducting a study. And in understanding that, you need a dose of knowledge that is informing. Why are you choosing banks and not the petrol station? Because there is a knowledge basis that either it is the banks that have introduced innovations and I want to assess whether they are working. Someone might be interested in these small businesses. What kind of innovations are they engaged in? Or is it possible for even individual business owners to make any innovations? So the nature of reality is going to determine the nature of the problem. And the nature of the problem is going to determine, the kind of assumptions and objectives and the nature of methodology that you are going to. Now, if these things are not clear right from the beginning, you go on moving back and forth. You get lost, you get confused, you read the literature, you don't know what to do with it. Why? Because things were not clear from the beginning. So integrating literature philosophy in the background even enables conceptual clarity. Conceptual clarity, because the reality is clear, the knowledge around it is clear, the concepts are clear. And some people explain concepts, they give one concept, give 10 definitions of it, go to another concept, give 6 definitions of it, and they think they have done, no. What are the elements that are emerging in these definitions? Which elements are useful to your study? Which elements are not useful to your study? And which kind of definitions are you going to adapt, for your study? And that is it. You need some little dose of philosophy so as to be able to navigate that. And then we talked about epistemology, which is knowledge, cogent knowledge basis for clarity and depth. If you have understood the nature of reality, then you also need the nature of knowledge that informs that reality, so that then you can be able to understand the reality in a deeper and more convincing way. And you can determine even your scope on the basis of a clear knowledge basis. And along the way, you are even allowing the in-depth interaction with the reality that you are dealing with, guided by your knowledge of philosophy, your knowledge of epistemology. When you go to the background, as we said, if the background is confusing, your reader is not interested in moving on, whether it is an article, whether it is a PhD thesis. And that's why when I was talking about leaning against the spiral, you don't begin with the background. You begin with the literature, you understand the problem, then you get the objectives, you know, something like that, and you keep back and forth. I said I'm more oriented to the spiral approach to research. You begin with the problem, the way it manifests to you, you do some literature and you explain it, you refine the problem, you get more literature, you begin writing the background, and the background of the proposal should not be the background of the final research. You know, some people will say, my background, you know, has been approved. It was approved at the time of the proposal. Now I'm going to chapter 4, 5, and 6, or 4 and 5. I'm not going back. After the findings, you can go back and refine your background. If you write the background before the methodology, when you determine the methodology, you'll go back and refine the background. If you've done data analysis and you've made recommendations, you go back. So when I say philosophy should be implicit or explicit, it doesn't even do any harm if you say, okay, my study is rooted in this particular context, and this context is more oriented towards a positivist kind of outlook that looks at the quantitative elements of it. It doesn't matter, you know, stating it precisely like that in the introduction, even in the background. But beyond precise, explicit, it should be underlying, you know, from the beginning to the end. So it doesn't do harm. For the articles, the journals will expect that you mention it even explicitly. In researches, you can mention it explicitly, you can keep it implicit. I'm not going to say that there is a standard on how you are going to do it, but if you explicitly say, okay, my study is about this, and I'm looking at this, and it is rooted in this kind of philosophy, I want to see that even in the background. I have no problem with it. Not that you have a subtitle on the philosophy of the study. No, it is part and parcel of your writing, of your explanation, of the way you are putting things. You are not going to have a section in the background talking about the philosophy of your research. No, that is not the explicit that I'm talking about. But in the way you are presenting the parameters of your research, in terms of the assumptions, in terms of the problem concepts and themes, yeah, the background themes and the operational themes, how you can mention in the problem statement. I mean, in the introduction, what kind of philosophy is informing this? You can even precisely mention it, either in the contextual background or even in the historicization of the background. You do not need a section in the background that talks about, you know, the research philosophy. There you might get a bit lost there. So you can creatively and intelligently, you know, hint on it, and so that by the time I come to your methodology, you know, things are already clear right from the background. We were answering how much should the background even reflect the methodological elements. So in your methodology, when you are articulating the issues that underlie your study, you are even projecting, and now you've done the research. So normally, when you finish the background, I mean the chapter 1, the proposal, the tendency among students is, my chapter 1, 2, and 3 were approved by the supervisors. The only thing I'm going to do is to change the tensing methodology and I'm done with the first 3 chapters. No. When you have done the data collection and analysis, you can go back and enrich your background. Yeah, because you could have written the background on the basis of literature, and assumptions, but now you have got some kinds of realities. Do you need to update the argumentation in the background? We shall guide students differently. Scholars will approach these things differently. When we have a conversation like this, then we are able, to pick ideas and see how to make things better. Logic, it's about argumentation. How do you structure your arguments? How do you highlight the assumptions and put the arguments? How do you supply the evidence? How do you then move on to draw the conclusions? How do you sequence ideas? You will review literature and different ideas are going to emerge. Sometimes you read literature and it is very chaotic. You pick this scholar says this, you pick another scholar says this, you pick a third scholar is a different idea that is contradictory from the previous. No, when you read literature, then you say, okay, what are the emerging issues? You can be able to even outline them. Then sequentially or logically, how am I going to sequence them so that you create some level of continuity? We do thematic analysis, especially in qualitative research, but also in quantitative, you can do thematic bit of analysis. How do you thematize? How do you create the major themes and the axial themes in line with your objectives, in line with your questions and hypotheses when you are reviewing literature? Yes, we say we review literature according to the themes of our objectives when you are doing a thematic review of literature. But even under one major theme, there are sub-themes that are emerging. How do you sequence them? How do you make an argument? How do you create the relationships between these elements? So students, when we say, okay, you have no literature, sometimes we are not saying you don't have literature at all. We said you are just reporting on what scholars have said. Scholar this said this, scholar this said this, scholar this said this. That is not literature review. It is literature narration. You are narrating. It's just like a summary of the literature. But we are telling you it has to be literature review. So in the background, you have some level of literature. How are you sequencing it? How are you identifying the issues? How are you linking these issues? What kind of deductions and inferences are you drawing? And how are these tied to your assumptions? And later on, when you go to the findings, how are they linked with the findings and conclusions? So philosophy in the background, as it is in the entire study, allows some level of systematicity. You become systematic, you become coherent, you are very well structured. And when someone is reading your work, they want to read on and read on and read on, because it is captivating. And that's why we talked about the writing style. But internal coherence is extremely necessary. It is 5:30. I can keep it there and give you back, Dr. Walugembe, the microphone to manage the next part of the study. Thank you, distinguished colleagues. I'm just sharing ideas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Denis Musinguzi, for that detailed and elaborate discussion on the issue of philosophy, integrating philosophy in the background. And really, you have taken us back to the issue of understanding philosophy. Every time I listen to you, when you are trying to simplify philosophy to a layman, to a new student, I really appreciate your understanding of the subject matter, in line with really appreciating this. And I think this is something that cuts across, as you mentioned, throughout the different sections of our projects, of our dissertations, from the background, literature, methodology, findings, and discussions. Any good student must actually bring out the philosophical approaches and the realities in his or her work. And I think this is kind of really informative to many, both the senior academicians and those who are trying to really move into their PhD journeys. Allow me at this moment, really invite contributions from our senior colleagues. Our topic of discussion today is integrating philosophy in the background of study. Of course, we may come back at a later date and rediscuss integrating philosophy in literature, philosophy in the methodology. Of course, methodology is actually very clear. We normally have a philosophical section, but these are the areas you don't have it, but you must integrate it. How do you do it? So today we are trying to unpack how do you integrate philosophy in the background. So allow me to welcome contributions from other senior colleagues as we appreciate the presentation from Dr. Msenguzi. Colleagues, any contributions, senior colleagues, Dr. Michael, Dr. Edith, Dr. Hassan, Dr. Greti, Dr. Professor James, Dr. Gideon, we welcome your contributions on Professor Sam Aderamora, your contributions on integrating philosophy in the background. You're welcome. Yes, Professor Sam, your microphone is mute. You can say, if you can bring on your contribution.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Chair, and I appreciated the information given to us by Dr. Dennis. And I'm from science background, actually engineering specifically, but these days I'm also moving towards social sciences. Even though one of the things I always tell my students, even some of them at most, I said sometimes try to present your documentation, your argument in a more like logical form. I always encourage them to use flowchart because that can help you and your reader actually to follow what we are looking at. So like Doctor said, we might not look at it, we might not discuss philosophy, but the logic, start from the beginning, how you decide the objective, how different components of your objective, how different component of methodology or data analysis contributes to the study, how do you look at each point and the conclusion and probably some other issues that policy issue that came out from your work. So I always encourage students to use that kind of approach. But though sometimes some of them find it difficult to just do it in a more systematic way. And I also believe if you do that way, in that logic way, which is Dr. now say philosophy, then you can actually, have this your study in your head without going through. Some of our students might like to read their slides sometimes, but because they have not really understood what they are doing. So if we encourage them to have this idea of, before you do anything, sit down, draw flow chart, your thinking pattern. How do you come across this problem? How do you go toward the end? Why do you choose this particular methodology? I think that will really help them. So Dr. Dennis said, in more general terms, but now I'm looking at it in more simple and applicable way that you can actually understand yourself properly. In my school in Norway, one of the courses that actually, we don't do a lot of courses, and we do a mix of taught course with PhD. But it is mandatory in my program that students register for a about 12 credits at the MOOCs, ethics of research, which is also a philosophy. You have to do that course. And if you don't pass it, you are not going to graduate. And then you have this other relevant courses that are related to your topic. So then you carry the title of doctor. You also have to have that in terms of the way they talk about teaching grace, but your philosophy, the way you process your knowledge, the way you process your thoughts. I think that is one of the things our students need to know, and that's one of the things we also need to know. So thank you, Shia. That is my take on that.
Thank you very much, Professor Sam Adramora. Professor Sam is one of the senior researchers who has supervised a number of PhD programs all the way from Norway. Professor Sam, thank you very much for always being part of the Soul Code platform. Right. Any other contributions from the senior colleagues? Any other contribution? If there's a question, students, put the question in the chat, please. But there's one which came to me direct. Dr. Msingu, somebody is saying, if I bring, does my contextual background and providing evidence of the problem or the catastrophic statements mentioned last week, do they represent the ontological reality in the background? Does the evidence presented in the background or the contextual evidence represent ontological reality in the background? That is a question to our presenter. Any other contributions, members from senior colleagues? Contribution from senior colleagues. Dr. Sadachimli, we will welcome you. Professor Michael, any contribution? Professor Kagari, any contribution in the discussion of integrating philosophy in the background?
I had talked about some students sharing experience. I don't know if they before the senior professors, but I know the professors are coming up. Dr. Walgembe.
Okay, we're going to do I think that is okay. Anybody going to share an experience? Don't just listen to the guys, then we can invite this professor that.
No, Dr. Hamad, I'm sorry for interference. I think Professor Kagali can go on. Students can come on along the way if they are interested.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Orgembe, Dr. Msingu. Thank you very much for that great contribution. I don't have much to say because I think you've brought out the issues of philosophy very well in the background. Particularly, I appreciate the issue of writing systematically and coherently. But maybe many times I remind my students, so when they are writing the background, to be empathetic and put themselves in the shoes of the reader and ask themselves that if they were the readers of what is written, would they continue reading? So that coherence and being systematic should let the reader yearn for more and more and more as they read ahead through the background. I have to appreciate what you have said. Thank you very much, Dr. Msingu. That's it, Dr. Warugembe.
Right. Thank you very much, Professor Kagari. Any contributions from the students' community? The presenter, Dr. Mfunguzi, requested for us to share our personal experiences. Anybody? Joseph, please, does your team do they have some questions or could they share some experiences? There's another second question in the chat. Enriching the background even after data collection. How is this done? More light, please, from Paul. Yes. Those are two questions now. But we can still pick insights from the students' community on, as the professor said, they may not be questions, but you can share the challenges you have faced and how you have really managed them over time. Right.
There is a hand from James Mubangisi, one of the students.
Yes, James, you can unmute.
Yes, good morning, everybody. And I wanted to begin by thanking Dr. Musinguzi Dennis for the wonderful presentation he has given us about integrating philosophy in our work. Yesterday, I was meeting my supervisor, and of course, he made several statements. When he made them, I thought I had understood him, but now today I've understood him more clearly from the presentation that we have had now. Because he asked me a question, for example, he said, do you think about what you are writing? That is the question asked me. Of course, there you say, yes, I think about what I'm writing, but I had not understood what he was trying to mean. Then I'm writing about control variables, and he was asking me some question about control variables. And then he said, why did you choose this control variable? And then you don't include this one. Of course, I started explaining some few answers, depending on how we're conversing. Then at the end of the day, he kept quiet, then we continued other questions. But now from the discussion we have had now, I have understood what he was trying to ask me, and I think I have benefited a lot from the presentation, and I thank Dr. Musinguzi for what he has shared with us today. That's what I can say.
Okay, thank you, James. James is one of our senior students on the platform who has been with us for a while. James, you're planning to have a session where you should give us your status and how far you have moved in your work, but you have been extremely active. Another contribution from the colleagues? Any other contribution from the colleagues? There's one more third question here. Michael Timozigu Kamugisha. Thank you so much, Dr. Musinguzi. Having research philosophy implicit throughout the research processes and answer to most of the questions always associated with research philosophy. Okay, this is a contribution. Right, I think, Doctor, we can answer the two questions we have so far, and then we can, I would request Professor Antai, if he has a comment, to come in. Professor Antai will come in and make a contribution after you, if he's still on. And then I also request Dr. Goretti Chene, if she's on to prepare to close the session, in case there are no more contributions. Professor Dr. Dennis, please, you can respond to those two issues.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Walugembe. Maybe let me just make some few comments as I answer the questions. Of course, the first person was Professor Sam, and he gave very powerful rejoinder in terms of clarity, in terms of students mastering what they are doing. Something that even Mubanjizi, the student, raised as a appreciation, the clarity as far as research is concerned. The students in the audience, if someone asks you, what is your research about? What is your study about? If you cannot explain what it is about in 1 or 2 sentences, and you need to explain and bring this example and bring this, then you realize how unclear you are as far as your own research is concerned. And the moment research is not clear in your head, then you are going to have trouble. doing it, moving forward. And in agreement with some, that is the basis of philosophy. The level of clarity, the level of exactness. You say, okay, my research is about this, it is about this, it's about this. And Dr. Walugembe, that ties into the first question, about the contextual, the historical background, and whether it is ontology or whether it is the reality. As I've said, when we are going to conduct our study, it is a study about something, whether abstract or practical, whether history, whether geography. There is a particular reality that you are dealing with. Ontology and epistemology might shift a bit in meaning when we come to methodology, but here at the level of research, and I mean generally, I'm telling you ontology is the nature of reality. Yes, in the contextual background, you have to be clear with the context, and that context should clearly highlight the reality that you are dealing with. Last week, Dr. Hassan used the example of communication, management communication. So if you are talking about management communication, communication is not abstract. It operates in a practical environment in an organization. So when we talk about ontology, again, the example of business that I used, maybe communication in one organization is different from communication in another organization. So then in the contextual background, you are able to tell us, wow, this is my reality that I am dealing with. And these are the key issues within this reality. And they are manifesting like this and this and this. So when we talk about, yes, the ontology, we are talking about the clarity of reality. Yes, in the contextual background, it's where we need to see your reality very clearly presented, very clearly explained, which goes back to the question of Sam. How, Professor Sam, how clear are your views about your research, about your problem, about what you are studying? You should be able to say, okay, my concern is about the ineffective communication within our organizations and how that is affecting, the performance of organizations. If you've stated that, then you should be able to tell us that communication indeed is key. So what is communication and how is it key? And how is it a problem in the organizations? So, I mean, you are able to tell us even which kind of organization are you talking about. So when I talk about ontology in the background, yes, that clarity of reality. And that's what I said, you don't need to have a section on research, on research methodology, I mean research philosophy in the background, but it reflects the way you are identifying ideas, the way you are explaining these realities. Even when you go to the historical background, this reality has manifested itself differently in different geographies, in different times. Especially with the emergence of technology in communication, things have improved along the way. So can you be able to tell us the reality of management communication before the advent of computer? What is the nature of communication after the emergence of the computer? That is the reality. If you've not understood that communication has changed over time, you are going to get lost. So the purpose of historicization is to see how is this reality you have described in a contextual background, how has it evolved across history and across different epochs? Yes, you'll be reflecting both the ontology, but also the epistemology, the knowledge basis. Because with the advent of computers, the communication could have changed in some fundamental ways. And meaning that the knowledge basis of communication has shifted from how we communicate, the modes of communication, something like that. The methods have changed, they have shifted. If you do not have that clarity, it becomes difficult for you, to conduct your research up to the end. And yes, it's good that even the National Council for Higher Education here in Uganda is now insisting about these cross-cutting courses. And Professor Sam has talked about his university, where you have to study ethics of ethics of philosophy of research, and it is a mandatory requirement for you to be able to do that. That's why we are now teaching either ethics of, either philosophy of science or epistemology, these kinds of things, so that we are able to get deeper into the reality. The second question was about enriching the background even after research. And I don't know if the person who asked the question was here last week, especially the first session of students. Was it? I don't remember, but I talked about someone who was saying, you see, I have done the data analysis, but now I'm still not submitting because I want to enrich my background. Again, we may have different views and different perspectives on this, but when you are writing a proposal, the assumption is you have not conducted research and you have not yet generated the findings. So you are basing your background on the initial literature that you have reviewed and the information that you've obtained. Now, when you generate findings and analyze findings, some of the positions that you are holding in the background may have been contradicted by the existing reality. So should now the question will be, if you are going to have a coherent thing, how much of the new insights from the study should come back, to inform the background to the study? I'm not saying that you are reflecting findings in the study, but the nature of argumentation, the kind of evidence that you are presenting can be, a little bit different. Mubanjizi, you are appreciating that things are now becoming clearer. I'm happy to hear that. Please, if someone is asking you, do you understand what you are writing about? Do you understand what you are saying? Yes, is asking for this kind of clarity. Dr. Walu.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Denis Musinguzi, for that really elaborate response to the issues raised. I'm trying to check if we have any other comments from the chat and also any hand up, any additional contribution from the audience, any additional contribution from the audience. I'm trying to check if we have any other additional comments.
Please share, just
yes,
to follow
Professor.
up, to follow what Dr. Dennis just said. Sometimes in some jurisdiction, they actually advise you to write your introduction last. You have gone to the field, you have collected your data. It's good to have a preliminary introduction at least to give your study in context, but the reality that you go to field and you end up have some different story, then students begin to struggle. How can I relate my resource to my background? Then you go back to your background. You rewrite your background to suit, to fit in. Sometimes it could be challenging, especially if your resource is completely, outlier. That might be challenging. But the reality, sometimes we tell our students, do your study. Then when you come to the writing, then you can go back and make some small changes that will reflect what you have. Because either you write your thesis or you write papers. The reader wants to see your objectives and they want to see your results. Are they correlated? If the answers are no, then you are in trouble. So sometimes we need to do that. And that is also one of the challenges we have at MOOCs and most of the university in this part of the world. We expect our students to come with a perfect proposal at the initial stage. And some students spend 6 months, 1 year preparing for proposal. After preparing the proposal with a kind of perfect, as far as the university want them to do, the first 2 weeks outside the field, they discover that the proposal is completely useless because the reality outside is completely different. So maybe some of our colleagues on campus should also understand that we call it proposal, not just because it's a fancy name. It's just like somebody call it budget. Budget is just an idea. How can we do this? It's an idea. Proposal is an idea. I expect the student to know the basic and some of the other issues, but it's an idea. It cannot be perfect until when the student go back to field. So maybe this comment from Dr. Dennis could also help us to know how to guide our students. As long as they understand the basic, they understand why they want to do the study, they understand their variables. I think that could help them because the field is completely different. And some of our students knows that by the time you come back, you have to rewrite your thesis completely from the introduction to the last page. Because what you presented 2 years ago, 1 year ago in your proposal is not the same as the reality you find in the field. So I agree with the doctor. Sometimes you should be humble enough to go back and revise your introduction instead of struggling to fit your questions, your solution that you find into get to introduction that is seem to not correlated. So be humble. And also the supervisors should also understand from the student point of view, because some supervisors are so critical of the students too. But you said in your introduction, but it's not coming out from your conclusion. Yes, it's not coming out because it was a proposal at the initial stage. It is not reality. The reality now should be correlated. So our senior colleagues should understand and also guide the students too, so that at least we don't end up, in cycles. And the supervisor will be complaining, the students are not following, but you also have to be humble and also understand the student point of view too. So thank you Doctor for bringing this again, and I hope some of us and some of our colleagues and some of the students will appreciate this comment. Thank you, Shia. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. We appreciate your continued involvement in the social science research. As you said earlier on, we are so much into the scientific angle. Dr. Sam Adramora, as earlier mentioned, is from Norway, but he has been able to supervise and support a number of students, especially those doing energy economics PhDs at Makerere University Business School. Dr. Sam, you're welcome, and we appreciate your contribution. Dr. Dennis, we appreciate you. Yes, Professor Ntai. Professor Ntai can give a comment on the today's presentation. He had a few issues with the network, but I think, yes, Professor?
Good morning, everyone. Are you hearing me, Dr. Walgembe?
Yes, very well.
Great. You know, Dr. Walgembe had promised Dr. Musengozi today that I'll not be speaking. But since you have requested me to say something, let me begin by thanking Dr. Musengozi for that exposition. And actually, the article that he sent us yesterday is very, very good and it's worth reading. And I think when he asked at the beginning whether members had read and they kept quiet, the assumption was that nobody had actually read it. Which, of course, again, that reflects his perspective, but it's because people kept quiet anyway. So I think the emphasis he has put on ontology, epistemology, and axiology, which is eventually followed up by methodology, is quite important. And when we are writing right from the background up to the end of our dissertation, all these things come up. And I think he has emphasized the issue of ontology, and he talked about ontological assumptions. And I think here, the study of being, right, is very important. And that's why we need to bring out the ontological assumption, because ontology deals with being, yeah, the study of being. And here we are concerned with what kind of world we are investigating, right, with the nature of existence. And that's why we talk about the structure of reality. And I think somebody, I think it was during Elasso's presentation, when the lady started talking about defining concepts, right? And of course, giving the variations, right? Now, if one followed closely, one would see the ontological variants coming up, right, during the conceptualization and the articulation of ideas that were being presented by the lady in that clip, right? And sometimes I know that when we are told that philosophy must be included in the background and so forth, many of us think that, we are going to write the word maybe philosophy, we are going to write maybe the word axiology, we are going to write the word, right, ontology. You may use it, you may not actually use it, right, as long as you know exactly what you are doing. So I think I must thank Dr. Musinguzi for the great job that he has done in articulating those aspects. When, for example, you do a systematic literature review, because I talked about this earlier on, right, and you are able to understand how far knowledge has developed in that area. And I know Professor Kagari also did talk about it, right? If you are able to tell that this is what scholars have done so far, right, and this is what remains to be done, and you're on top of things, right, meaning that in terms of constructing knowledge, right, you are either going to use what we call the synthesized, right, coherence, or probably progressive or non-coherence. That process, right, of constructing your argument, right, is also philosophical, right? And the moment you articulate it properly, somebody is able to see where you are coming from, and you can even predict where you are likely to end up at the end of the day, right? Whether you even take the positivistic perspective or probably the non-positivistic perspective. And again, I think Dr. Musinguzi has articulated these things very well. So I think the most important thing here for us is to understand what philosophy is all about, right? Whether you've taken the metaphysical that Dr. Musinguzi highlighted, or otherwise, right? The moment you understand what it is, and you are able to articulate, right, issues properly, because you want to understand that particular problem, the existence of the problem, the way it exists out there, right, and so forth, then you are taking some philosophical perspective there, right? I'm sure you are very familiar about the realist, right, and the anti-realist perspective, right? All these are very important, and I think Dr. Musinguzi has ably brought out these issues, and I like the submission of my friend James, right? You know, we had a heated debate, right? And one of the students was also involved in articulating, discussing his argument and dismissing his arguments. And for me, I liked the discussion, which again put him somewhere, right, to realize that probably a few things are missing. And when he attended this session, he's confessing and says, yes, I think now I understand. And I think that's why that's why it is important for all of us to attend sessions of this nature wherever they are, because there is always something new that you learn, right? Even when you know, right, there is something that is that you pick from a colleague or from the presenter, or even a student, so that you improve your learning, or your knowledge base, right, in this case. So Ahmed, I think that's all that I can say at the moment, but I must thank Dr. Musinguzi, and again emphasize that link: ontology, epistemology, axiology, and methodology, right? And we need to really put emphasis to those aspects. And in every research, those aspects will be there. Over to you, Ahmed.
Thank you very much, Professor Ntai. I think we shall have another detailed discussion on the link between those aspects of philosophy and how one leads to the other, but bringing out the reality in writing and how actually somebody can actually really depict or display those aspects in the writing style. Thank you very much. We are at around 5 minutes past 6. We really appreciate those who join in at 3 a.m. and those who joined us at 4 a.m. 3 hours into the discussion is kind of a great contribution. We really appreciate all of you for being with us, specifically the senior colleagues who are not rewarded for their time, but they really wake up in the wee hours of the night and the morning and make their contributions clear. We appreciate you, all our colleagues, for your contributions. Thank you very much for the continuity and the commitment to support and enable the future. To the students, the struggle continues till when you are done, and also join the other colleagues. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. Allow me to invite Dr. Goret Chene, if she's on, to come and give us a few remarks and a closing prayer. Dr. Goret.
Thank you, Dr. Walugembe. I would like also to add my voice to thank Professor Ntai, and then also our main presenter this morning, for the clarity given on integrating philosophy into research, into the background for research. Just to note, without repeating what my seniors have indicated, in research, we come out to create knowledge, to add new knowledge on what has been done. And what has been emphasized this morning is basically how systematically are you presenting your thoughts in the research you are undertaking, paying attention to the coherence of your thoughts so that your research is more reliable and it can spark off more arguments for further research. When we do research today, tomorrow, some new discussions come up on what you have found out. And this can only happen if you have been very coherent in your research, you've paid attention to how you have presented your ideas and how you have gone about justifying those ideas and what methodology you have used in your research and in your discussions. So the issue of ontology, epistemology, and methodological approaches come in. And this is what our colleague has ably presented this morning. And we do thank you so much for this discussion and interaction, and also the fellow colleagues that have contributed. Professor Dennis, we thank you so much, and we look forward for more discussion on this matter to expound on those different branches of philosophy. Having said that, I would like now to request you to humble ourselves in a brief prayer. Father Lord, we thank you for the knowledge that we have shared this morning. We thank you for the gift of our interaction through the different participants. We pray, Father Lord, that you continue granting us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding so that we are able to improve ourselves and also support all those that are entrusted to us to support. We pray for our blessed day and we continue entrusting our lives in your hands. In Jesus' name I've prayed. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much, Dr. Goret Sheune. Members, thank you very much for being with us this morning. We meet next week as we deliberate and discuss further issues. Thank you, and may God bless you all. Have a wonderful Sunday.
Thank you. Have a wonderful Sunday, you too.
Nice Sunday. Bye.